It's a Thursday night, somewhere past 11. You're on a stretch of road you've driven 100 times. The speedometer's maybe 3-4 ticks over the limit. Nothing that would ever get a second glance in daylight. But at night, on an empty road, those lights hit your rearview mirror and your stomach drops anyway. You pull over, you kill the engine, you grab your license, your registration, your proof of insurance, you set them on the dash, and then you wait. The officer approaches, flashlight low, walks up to your window, takes your documents, looks them over, and then, almost offhandedly, like he's making conversation while the system runs your plate, he leans in and asks a question. So, where are you headed tonight? 5 words, casual tone, could not sound more harmless. And that right there is the moment your entire night pivots. Because what comes out of your mouth in the next 10 seconds is going to determine whether you're back on the road in 5 minutes or standing on the shoulder with a pen light tracking your eyes. I've spent close to 2 decades inside courtrooms watching body camera footage of traffic stops. And I can tell you something with absolute certainty. Sober, law-abiding, completely innocent people talk themselves into arrests on the side of the road every single night in this country. Not because they did anything wrong, because they answered a question they thought was small talk. By the time we're done here, you're going to understand the mechanism behind that question, the psychology behind why it works, and I'm going to give you the exact language to shut it down cleanly. But I need you to stick with me through the whole thing, because the question itself is only the beginning. There are follow-up tactics trained into this procedure, and one of them is arguably more dangerous than the original question. Almost no one sees it coming. So let's pull this apart. When the officer asks where you're coming from or where you're headed, here's what is not happening. He is not curious, he is not being friendly, he's not passing time while his computer loads. Every single thing happening in that window is operational. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration trains officers to treat the personal contact phase of a traffic stop as a structured interview. That's the term. Not a chat, not a greeting, an interview. The moment the officer reaches your window, he is running a checklist that you cannot see. He's positioning himself to catch the smell of your breath. He's listening to the cadence of your speech. He's watching your eyes track his movements. And he's doing something most people never realize. He's watching whether you can hand him a card and speak at the same time, because divided attention tasks are a core indicator in impairment assessment. The question is the delivery system for all of it. It forces you to talk, to think, to coordinate, and to reveal, all while you believe you're just being polite. That's the design. And it works because it's disguised as nothing. Now let me show you why every possible answer to that question is a problem. Imagine 3 paths. The first path. You answer directly. You say you came from a friend's place, or a restaurant, or a bar. Seems reasonable, seems cooperative. But what you've actually done is hand the officer a narrative thread. Because the natural trained follow-up to that answer is some version of, oh yeah, have anything to drink while you were there? And now you're inside the conversation you were trying to avoid. You opened the door yourself, voluntarily. And everything you say from this point forward is being evaluated for inconsistency. The second path, you hedge, you say something non-committal. Just driving around. Nowhere, really. And now you've handed him something different, but equally useful. Evasion. Training tells officers that vague or shifting answers during a stop are significant. Because if your answer doesn't line up with what he observes next, the smell he thinks he catches, the slight pause he noticed, the way your eyes moved, all of that becomes a written justification in his report for extending the stop. Your vagueness becomes his reasonable suspicion. The third path, the one most people think is bulletproof. You say nothing. You go silent, you stare ahead. And here's where the law does something that surprises almost everyone, including people who should know better. Silence, on its own, does not protect you the way you think it does. Let me show you why. In 2013, the United States Supreme Court decided a case called Salinas against Texas. The facts are straightforward. A man was being questioned by police. They asked him a pointed question. He didn't answer. He didn't say he was invoking his right to silence. He didn't say anything at all. He just went quiet. And at trial, the prosecution used that silence as evidence of guilt. The Supreme Court upheld it. The ruling, stripped of the legal language, says this: your right to remain silent is not something that activates automatically by going quiet. You have to claim it, out loud, clearly. If you simply stop talking without saying why, that silence is legally ambiguous, and ambiguous behavior can be introduced as evidence against you. Think about what that means in the context of a traffic stop. Answering honestly can hurt you. Answering vaguely can hurt you. And going silent without the right words can also hurt you. Every door is locked from the inside. And the key is not silence. The key is knowing precisely what to say. But before I give you that phrase, you need to understand the bigger picture. Because this question is not an isolated tactic. It's part of a system, and the system has a clock on it. In 2015, the Supreme Court decided Rodriguez against the United States. And the rule that came out of that case is arguably the most important thing any driver in this country can understand. An officer cannot hold you on the side of the road any longer than it takes to complete the business of the stop. Running your license, checking for warrants, writing the citation. Once that's done, the stop is over. He has to let you go. Unless, during that window, he developed a specific, articulable reason to suspect you of something else. Reasonable suspicion. A real defensible reason to extend the detention. So here's the question that should make you sit up. Where does that reasonable suspicion come from? In case after case, courts have looked at factors like inconsistent statements, nervous behavior, and travel plans that don't seem to make sense as the building blocks of reasonable suspicion, which means when the officer asks where you're coming from, he is not fishing for a destination. He is fishing for the justification to keep you there longer. You're being invited to supply the very evidence that extends your own detention. And there's a layer beneath that. If you have a passenger, a trained officer will frequently ask them the same question, separately, out of your earshot, not because he's being thorough, because he's comparing answers. If your version of the evening and your passenger's version don't align perfectly, even on small details, that mismatch becomes his reasonable suspicion. Most people have no idea that the person sitting in the seat next to them is being interviewed for the exact same purpose. So, what do you say? Here it is. Commit this to memory. Officer, I'm invoking my right to remain silent. I won't be answering questions about my evening. That's the phrase, calm, clear, said once. Let me break down what every piece of that is doing. Officer, I'm invoking my right to remain silent. That is not attitude. That is not defiance. That is law. Remember, Salinas, the right protects you only if you claim it affirmatively. That sentence does exactly that. You are not being ambiguously quiet. You are invoking a documented constitutional right on the record. There is nothing for a prosecutor to twist. I won't be answering questions about my evening. That second half closes both trapdoors at once. You're not giving a location to follow up on. You're not giving a vague story to catch you in an inconsistency. You have said nothing about where you were, who you were with, or what you did. You have refused the interview without refusing to cooperate. And notice what you did not do. You did not refuse to hand over your license. You did not refuse your registration or your insurance. You produced everything the law requires, because in nearly every state, you are legally obligated to provide those documents during a stop. Refusing that turns a manageable situation into a chargeable one. You comply with what the law demands. You simply do not volunteer information for an investigation that has not been announced. Now, he's going to push back. He always does. Let me walk you through this sequence. First, the reset. He'll rephrase. He'll soften his tone. Something like, look, I'm not trying to cause you trouble. I'm just asking where you were headed tonight. It will sound like a fresh start. It is not. It is the same question wearing a different shirt. You do not need to re-explain yourself. You already invoked. You say your phrase one more time, calmly, and then you stop talking. You owe him nothing further. Then comes the pressure play, the one designed to make your silence feel like a confession. Most people with nothing to hide just answer the question. Listen to me carefully. That statement is engineered to make you feel like your rights are evidence of guilt. They are not. Once you have invoked your right to remain silent, choosing not to answer is the exercise of a constitutional protection. A calm person asserting a right does not look guilty to a jury. It looks like someone who understands the law. Do not take the bait, do not argue, do not justify. Stay quiet. Then the escalation. He may tell you to step out of the vehicle, and here's what you need to know. Under a Supreme Court case called Pennsylvania against Mims, an officer can lawfully order you out of your car during a valid traffic stop. So you step out, you comply. But stepping out of the car is not consent to anything beyond that. If he says, "You mind if I take a look inside?" your answer is one sentence. "I do not consent to any searches." Said plainly. Said once. Do not elaborate. Do not negotiate. And if you're not sure whether you are still being detained, there is one question that cuts through the ambiguity. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? That question matters because of Rodriguez. The moment the original purpose of the stop is complete, the officer needs a legitimate, articulable reason to hold you. If he does not have one, you are free to leave. And asking that question forces him to either articulate that reason on the record or release you. So here's what I want you to hold on to. A traffic stop is not a conversation. It is an investigation wearing the mask of a conversation. The casual tone is a technique. The friendly question is a test. And the legal architecture is quietly stacked against you right up until the moment you assert your rights, clearly and calmly. You do not win a traffic stop by being clever. You do not win by lying. You do not win by freezing up and saying nothing. You win by having one prepared sentence delivered the same way every time that invokes your rights without giving the investigation anything to work with. If this breakdown helped you, YouTube's algorithm is already queuing up the next video it thinks you need to see. Go ahead and click that one while it's fresh. And if you want more of these, the kind of breakdowns that could matter on the worst night of your life, subscribe now. Because the time to learn the words is before you need them, not after.